Life is a series of unscripted experiences that forge us into unique individuals. These are the experiences and stories of those who possess the will, beliefs, and fortitude required to overcome obstacles, pursue their passions, and achieve success. Welcome to the HawkCast with your host, AJ Hawk.
JJ Redick is with us, and JJ, I gotta tell you, man, for some reason, I grew up a gigantic Duke basketball fan, so this is a huge honor, man. Thanks for coming.
I did not know that. It's a pleasure to be on the podcast. We were talking earlier about podcasting and some of the challenges that come with it. So I just want to say, I always will look out for my fellow podcasters.
Yes, and you do. You host the Vertical podcast with JJ Redick, and I became aware of that a while back, man. But you do a really good job. And you have a lot of athletes on. We talked about the struggle sometimes of booking athletes, getting guys to show up on time or give you a call. It's just because athletes, I think, for some reason, maybe have athletes just been catered to too much growing up?
I don't know if it's that we've been catered to. I think part of it maybe is that there's maybe a level of entitlement. And the other thing I would say is, especially during the off season, I think athletes are very protective of their time. And so if you text them and say, hey, man, next Wednesday, can you jump on the podcast with me? It'll take 30 minutes. In theory, they're good people, and they say yes. But when it comes down to Wednesday at 2 p.m., they're out on the golf course or they're at the pool drinking a beer, and they're like, I don't want to do it. So I get it. It's difficult.
It is. I guess especially if people don't really listen to any other podcast and they don't know that, hey, this was going to be the episode I wanted to put out this week. I need you. I'm counting on you. They think it's just a text that they didn't respond to, maybe.
Yeah. I've had some where I'll text a guy and I'll say, hey, Friday at 1, we're doing the podcast, and I'll get a text back from him Saturday at 4 p.m. and be like, hey, man, sorry, the weekend got away from me. I'm like, what is the weekend got away from you? What does that mean?
Yeah, what exactly? Yeah, how does that even work? So you were, for the record, you were very prompt on time. I was actually called you like a minute or two late, so I really, really appreciate that. It's so nice, man, to not have to worry about it.
I've been sitting by my computer for 12 minutes waiting for the phone call.
Just getting pissed. Like, all right, he's 45 seconds late, man.
So I got a question for you real quick. So I never knew you were a Duke fan. Why were you a Duke fan? How did that come about?
Man, I'm not even sure. Like, I remember some of my earliest memories are watching, I think it was against North Carolina, watching Capel, whichever Capel it was, the older one who's a coach now. Which one is that?
Jeff.
Jeff hit like a half-court shot to send into overtime, I think, against North Carolina back in the day.
So 1995, yeah.
Yep, and obviously Christian Laettner, I followed those guys. But I'm not sure. For some reason, I watched Florida State football as well. I mean, I'm from Ohio, so I've been an Ohio State fan the whole time, but Duke was like my basketball team. Maybe it's just because you guys were so good.
I feel like that's the reason a lot of teams are fans. I mean, maybe I'm a front runner because I became a Duke fan myself back in 91 and 92 when they were winning championships. And I grew up a Duke fan. So for me, when I was getting recruited in high school, it was always a matter of, if Duke offered, I'm going to Duke. Like, there's not going to be any hesitation. So I was kind of delaying the process with some other schools because I just wanted to hear those words out of Coach K's mouth.
How many official visits did you take?
I took 0 official visits. I committed really early, like beginning of my junior year of high school, before my junior season. I basically told 4 or 5 schools that were recruiting me, I didn't like the process. Let's just get this over with. So I went on these unofficial visits, and they treated them as official visits.
Now, does basketball have similar official visits as football does?
In what sense?
So when a high schooler takes a football official visit, you go there on Friday morning, maybe you get out of school early, whatever. You go with your parents. You have some meetings with the coaches during the day. You check out the facilities, and then they assign you like a host, a current player, and he takes you out. And basically, I mean, now the rules have changed, but it usually would take the high school kids out to get them hammered. The kid hopefully wakes up the next morning for his meeting with the coach. And then they do it all again Saturday night.
Yeah, that's basically how it was when I was in school. The NCAA has changed all sorts of rules, but I was generally, when I was at Duke, I was generally the host. So I would I would get like, the $30 they would give you to go entertain the kid. And, you take him out, you use that as beer money and you'd get the kid drunk. And you're right. It was like always a 9 a.m. meeting the next morning with the coaches and the kids like stumbling out of bed, trying to get it done. It's funny you mentioned going with your parents though. So I took an unofficial to NC State, an unofficial to UVA, and then an unofficial to Duke. And the following weekend, I was going to take an unofficial to the University of Florida, but I was going to go with my sisters, my older sisters, to Gainesville. No parents. And in between my Duke visit and my upcoming Florida visit, I decided to commit to Duke. Had I gone to Gainesville with my sisters, I might have ended up at University of Florida. It might have happened. Billy D might have persuaded me somehow.
That happens, man. I got plenty of buddies that went to I talked to them like, well, what made you go to whatever college it is they went to? And they're like, honestly, man, my official was amazing.
Yeah. It's a terrible thing to base such a big decision on, but it's like, I had a great weekend at this school.
Oh, for sure. I know plenty of guys that had huge D1 offers from all over, and they end up going to like a middle-of-the-road D1 team, and it was strictly because they were 18 years old and they had a visit that they felt was like out of this world.
Yeah, not the smartest thing. Honestly, though, it's weird looking back. I'm 31 now, getting ready to turn 32. I committed to Duke almost 16 years ago, and I made terrible choices as a young adult and as an older teenager, and that was like the one good decision that I made with my life. I'm glad I went. I really am.
Like, what's like an example of a terrible decision you made? It doesn't seem like it's public if it was.
Well, I mean, if you look up some stuff, I mean, I had a DUI when I was 21. My first 2 years at Duke, I would say I was more committed, although I was not in a fraternity, I was more committed to living a frat style life than being a Duke basketball player.
But you had monster success on the court.
Yeah, but I could have done more. And I tell this, I've told this story before, but the summer between my sophomore and junior year, the coaching staff basically challenged me and said, we're not going to kick you off the team, but you can continue down the path you're on, and we're going to sort of go in a different direction in terms of the responsibilities you have as a player and a leader, or you can really invest yourself in this process and ultimately see how good you can become. And then of course, I my last 2 years at Duke, I was pretty good on the court.
Yeah, 2006 National Player of the Year.
Yeah.
In all of college. That wasn't a question. That was just a statement to let you know it turned out pretty good for you.
It did, man. And honestly, I think we all need those sort of growing pains. And it wasn't like that happened at the end of my sophomore year and then my life was smooth sailing since. I mean, you're always going to have sort of valleys. And as athletes, I'm sure you can attest to this too, but as athletes, I mean, within a season, within a game even, it's like a series of peaks and valleys that you have to go through. And as you've gotten older, I'm sure in your career, and me too, it's like you realize the people that survive in this profession are the people that are the toughest mentally.
For sure. And consistent is a huge thing. Just consistency every single day. I can't, in basketball especially, man. What do you have, 82 regular season games now?
Yeah, 82 games. I think usually about 8 preseason games and then the playoffs. So you're looking at, if you make it deep in the playoffs, 110 games.
That's nuts, man. And was this your 10th season?
Yeah, finish up my 10th season. I have 1 year left on my contract here in Los Angeles, so I'll finish up year 11 next summer and hopefully sign a new deal and hopefully it's a multi-year deal, and that'll probably be it for me. I'd like to get a 4-year deal, and 15 seems like a nice number to end on.
I would say, man, not many people obviously make it, let alone play 15. You're in LA for the Clippers. Do you feel like the Clippers have taken over as LA's team?
Oh man, I don't think we have. It would take us winning at least one championship, maybe 2 or 3, to take over as LA's team. The history of the Lakers here and their pedigree is pretty undeniable, and their fan base is very, very strong. And obviously for years, anybody who knows the Clippers, up until about 6 or 7 years ago, we've sort of been the laughing stock of the NBA as a franchise, and we've turned that around. But we've got a ways to go before we overtake LA or the Lakers as sort of LA's team.
I think. What do you feel about them bringing in Luke Walton to be the head coach?
No, I think it's a great call. One thing that is sort of happening, I think, in the NBA, front offices, owners are beginning to realize that the game is changing, and you need a coach who understands the modern game and sort of pacing and spacing, spreading the floor, driving, kicking, being able to shoot threes. And as evidenced by his success this year when he was the head coach while Kerr was out, he understands the modern game, and he's gonna, it might take some time given with the personnel they have on their team right now, but he'll be really good there.
I was a fan of Luke when he played. I mean, I'm a huge fan of his dad and his dad's TV commentary, no doubt. Like the most interesting man on TV, pretty much.
Oh man, can we get Bill Walton back on ESPN
for real?
I feel like that needs to happen. I really do.
Can I get Bill Walton on my podcast is another question, man. I need to find that. I need to get his contact info. I'm sure he's off the grid somewhere at Burning Man, whenever that is.
Smoking peyote or something.
I heard Luke tell a story one time on an interview about my brother and I we were laughing. Luke, I think he was saying how he finally got like a real gift for his birthday or for Christmas from his dad, because whenever growing up their whole life they would get like whatever the team would get him or whatever his shoe deal was at the time, Adidas or Nike, he'd just give him like t-shirts or shoes or something. He never went and actually bought him a gift.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it was just all of his marketing deals. He would just hand him like the leftovers and wrap it. I'm sure his wife wrap it up.
Takes a special kind of man to do that.
I love him. So yeah, we'll see how Luke does out there with the Lakers. I don't know, but NBA, as far as the NBA goes, it's a different world now, I feel like, than what it used to be. I mean, I'm 32. I grew up watching like Jordan play on Sunday afternoons.
The NBC Sunday games, yeah.
Yeah, Marv Albert. So
yeah.
I don't know. It's weird. Like, how has it changed from when your rookie year till now? Has the league, I know it's cyclical, how everything always works out with the offenses. Is it different?
It's certainly different. The biggest difference in terms of style of play is most teams are playing smaller now. A lot of teams don't necessarily play two traditional big men on the floor at the same time. Shooting has always been sort of at a premium and valued, that's probably the most valuable asset you can have as a player now. And then, in terms of planning, front office, coaching, advanced metrics have sort of become one of the most important indicators as far as teams making decisions. So, who you get, how you mix players, the lineups you put on the floor, all that stuff's being monitored. And it used to be when I first got in the NBA, people would always talk about, can this guy create his own shot? And now we realize that a guy who is essentially a ball stopper, those are inefficient scorers. And while they certainly have their place at times, the style of play that the Spurs play, that the Warriors play, that the Heat played when they had the big three together, that's really the most efficient style of basketball.
You had Stan Van Gundy, your old coach, on your podcast, and I listened to it. Man, that was amazing listening to you guys talk like the ins and outs of basketball, and it went right over the head of myself and a lot of people. Not all of it. You guys did a good job of dumbing it down.
Yeah.
But just to listen to you guys talk about like how the stuff you were saying, like creating your own shot, and I know you talked about being a defender.
Yeah.
And he was saying there's really no one in the league, or maybe two or three, that can actually match up on a dude and shut him down.
Yeah, I think for a casual fan, you talk about like things going over your head. Like for a casual fan of any sport, your sort of expertise is based upon your own experience. So for the average NBA fan who maybe played high school basketball or some level of college basketball, that is their experience. But the NBA game is so different, and the nuances of the NBA game are so different. I'm sure for you too, it's like if someone came up to you giving advice and their level of football was, high school football that they played in the 1970s. Well, the game has really changed since then, and strategies or whatever, coverages, all that. And so I think for the really successful organizations, the really successful coaches, players, all that stuff, you have to be flexible enough to evolve with the game.
Have all the great coaches you played for, is that like a common thread through all of them, that they can adapt?
Oh my God. That word you just used, adapt. When I describe to people what makes Coach K so great, he is the most adaptable coach. He caters his system to whatever that team's strengths are. Whereas some coaches say, all right, this is my system. I'm going to make my players play my system. Coach says, all right, who do I have on my team? I got Grayson Allen on my team. All right, I'm going to give him the ball on the left wing. He's a great driver. I'm going to get him to his right hand, and that's going to be our go-to. I have JJ Redick on my team. All right, we're going to run catch and shoot offense. We're going to have him coming off staggers and baseline screens. So he really caters to his sort of, so to speak, horses, and he does that with everything. The way he's handled the USA basketball team, he's catered to those guys and adapted to those guys and figured out, how to put his players in the best position to win.
Going to that USA basketball and Coach K, like, what makes him, like, what kind of traits does he have that gives him the ability to coach those guys? I cannot imagine the amount of personalities and egos you have to figure out.
Yeah. I think Coach was always interested in coaching the NBA. My sophomore year in 2004, the Lakers courted Coach, and they offered him a big contract. He ultimately decided to go back to Duke. But that was always sort of in the back of his mind that what would I have success coaching NBA players? And when the opportunity came about in the fall of 2005 to be named the USA men's basketball team head coach, he jumped on him. It was a great opportunity for him. And I got to be around him those first couple of summers as he was adjusting and adapting. When I was part of the national team program, I obviously didn't play on any of the teams. I didn't make the teams, but I got to be a part of the training camps during the summer. And I think it was a great learning experience for him. But I mean, first of all, he's an expert, and he's got championships. So he walks into a room, he commands your respect and all that. That's the toughest thing, I think, for any coach walking into a room full of NBA players and NBA superstars, is you got to have their respect. But he also, he's adapted with those guys. He's figured out, which guys play well together and kind of who to go to and how to manage egos. That's, I'm sure you can attest to. It's like in the NFL, pro athletes, we all have some egos, and a coach has to manage egos as much as he has to know X's and O's.
Basketball, I think, is the number one most difficult job as a coach compared to other sports, just because it's so. I mean, LeBron is LeBron. He's the team. Yeah. He's the city of Cleveland. Like and he's, I mean, been unreal forever. I grew up in Ohio, so I grew up watching him play in high school. So I can't imagine, just because it's although it's a team game, there's only five guys in the court at the same time. It's an individual game more than any other sport, really.
I would agree with you. I think the NBA is more superstar driven than any other sport. LeBron, your example with LeBron is a great example. When he went to Miami, immediately Miami gained millions of fans. I don't know that if Aaron Rodgers leaves Green Bay and goes to, let's say, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I don't know that Tampa Bay gains millions of fans. Sure, certainly they would gain some Aaron Rodgers fans for sure, but NFL, baseball, like, I'm a Red Sox fan. It's a long story, but it doesn't really matter who plays for the Red Sox to me. I like the Red Sox. That's my team. And I don't know that basketball is the same way unless you're like truly a diehard. It's more about which guy is on which team. Yeah,
you hit it for sure. It is. I mean, free agency changes it and all that back in the day when guys started jumping around. But it is like now the finals beginning, it's LeBron versus Steph.
Yeah, that's the storyline. It's always about the matchup of the superstars as opposed to the teams, for sure. I would say the only real position in football that's like that is quarterback. So if like Brady and Manning, when they play against each other, that was the headline matchup. But otherwise, it's normally just like, the Bucks versus the Falcons, and in the NBA, it's all about the superstar. It's all about the headliner as sort of the premier event.
Now this game one is tonight, actually. of the time of this recording. So it's gonna be a couple of days before I post it. But how do you see that series playing out?
Oh man, part of me thinks that the Cavs have a chance, but defensively, I think they're going to have a lot of issues stopping the Warriors. And if they do decide to play smaller and play their best defenders, then they're going to have problems scoring against the Warriors. So ultimately, I think Warriors are going to win. And to be honest with you, I think Warriors are going to win in 5. I think going back to Golden State for Game 5, I think Warriors win that game to close out the series.
Even after this supposed Warriors struggle, where everyone thinks they were going to get knocked out, and they come back and just stick a dagger in Oklahoma City.
I mean, Oklahoma City was a great team, and again, we're talking about superstars sort of driving the success of teams in this sport. Oklahoma City has 2 of the 4 best players in the world in Westbrook and Durant. So as long as those guys are in OKC, they're a contender. They have a chance to win. I thought they were going to close them out. I thought Game 6 was going to go to OKC, and I thought it would be, KD versus LeBron in the finals. Instead, we get Steph versus LeBron.
It's going to be fun to watch. Going back when you said something about your time at Duke, so you were there for 4 years, which is absolutely unheard of now.
Yeah.
Do you ever have guys that you play with that skipped college completely? Do they sit there and want to hear college stories about being a normal kid, and that they're jealous that they never got that experience?
I've played with a few guys that came straight out of high school. Obviously, you can't anymore. You have to go to college for at least 1 year. I think guys do miss out on something by not going to college or only staying in college for a year. And I don't think you're necessarily prepared for the NBA off the court. On the court, I don't think it makes a difference. I think there's a learning curve for anyone, whether you stay 4 years or whether you come out of high school on the court. It's really off the court and learning how to sort of take care of yourself as an adult that I think is the biggest challenge for a lot of younger players. I know myself personally, and I've had good vets when I was a younger player, but I always try to at least take 1 or 2 guys every year, sort of, and if they're willing to listen, give them some advice and some pointers.
Have you seen over time that those younger guys are less willing to listen these days?
You know what? It's a different generation, and I think every older generation says that. But I don't like to label myself a millennial. I don't know if you do, but the millennials.
I'm way too old to be a millennial. I'm 32.
The true millennials, man, the people that are 20, 21, 22 now, it's just their mindset is so different, man. They all grew up with cell phones from the time they were 11. They grew up in this social media life. There's a lot of guys I know that are just about me. It's a weird generation, man. It really is.
Well, I mean, number one point would be the Lakers deal this year. D'Angelo Russell posting whatever the video. I forget the dude's name. What's the guy's name? Yeah, Nick. Yeah, Swaggy P. That's all I know him as.
Swaggy P. There you go.
Yeah. So that, and D'Angelo Russell. I'm an Ohio State guy. He was an Ohio State kid. In that whole situation, are both those guys still on the team for this next year?
As far as I know, yes.
I mean, how does Luke Walton come in the locker room, and how do you handle that?
That's a tricky situation. D'Angelo made a mistake, obviously, and he's certainly owned up to it and taken responsibility and feels bad about it. I would just say that any dysfunction, it stems from something, and part of it is just the culture in the locker room. And that, to me, it's more an onus on maybe the front office or some of the coaching staff that you gotta take these young guys and sort of, show them the ropes a little bit. That was stupid. But again, part of it is I don't think that maybe Byron Scott or somebody, he probably doesn't use Snapchat. He doesn't know what Snapchat is. He doesn't know what to do.
Oh, I can't. Can you imagine being what if Coach K how does he go into these living rooms of kids and talk to them like, oh, hey, here, let's take a selfie, buddy? Like, how does he go in there and how does he stay? Does he feel I'm sure you communicate with Coach K still, like, does he still try to stay hip to these young kids that he's got to recruit?
Well, it's funny because I talked about adaptability earlier, and I think Coach K has adapted to this generation. I remember going to a practice like 5 or 6 years ago. I'd been out of school for maybe 4 years. And after practice, I said to him, I was like, man, Coach, I was like, you've gone soft on these guys. And he's like, it's these younger guys, man. I got to figure it out. And I don't know if you knew this or not, but Coach K actually has an Instagram account. I don't actually know what his username is, but he looks at all my Instagrams that I post to my son. He'll text me or something, oh, that video you put up of Knox is amazing. So he is adapting to social media and has figured it out. When I was in school, you couldn't have beards. I can't even imagine having like Twitter accounts posted on the Jumbotron, but they do all that stuff now.
You couldn't have a beard?
Facial hair.
Wow, you guys are the Yankees.
You could have a mustache.
Did you ever grow a stash out in your time there?
No. I was super clean shaven, man. But now, like, I always have, like a little scruff or whatever. If I'm clean shaven, I look 19 years old. I don't want to look 19. So, but yeah, I had to shave like nearly every day when I was at Duke.
Man, I didn't realize that. One thing I always wondered, was it fun playing for Coach K?
It was mentally demanding every day. And for someone like me, if you're wired the right way, it was the most fun that you can imagine. And for me too, it was like I grew up a Duke fan, so I'm literally in the locker room and he's doing his spiel and he's doing his motivational talks and I'm getting goosebumps and sort of pinching myself. I can't believe this is real. And then you fast forward now, I've been out of school 10 years, but listen, he's my friend. Like Coach K at 31 years old, I've literally kind of worshiped this guy since I was 8 years old. I can call him a friend. It's a pretty awesome feeling.
It's got to be. Have you had any dealings with Bobby Knight?
No, I maybe met Coach Knight once when I was in school, but I've never really dealt with him.
So Coach K played for Bobby Knight, correct?
Yeah, he played for him at Army, and then I want to say he was his assistant coach at Army. Maybe a year before Coach went to IU. That might be wrong. I don't know. I don't know Coach K's whole life story. All right.
I don't know. See, you can tell I'm a Duke fanboy. I'm asking all these questions about Coach
K. I know.
And a guy who you played with too was Greg Paulus.
Yeah, I played with Greg. Who is he still at Ohio State?
Yeah, I'm pretty confident he's still an assistant.
yeah. I played with Greg. He was my freshman, my senior year, and he was funny because even when he was in school, like he always knew he wanted to coach, and so I'm really happy for him. It's cool to see someone sort of pursue their dream and have it live out.
I got to meet Greg a couple years ago at a charity event here that Thad Matta was having, and I was pumped, man. Like I was watching an Ohio State game. I didn't know Greg was had been hired. However many years ago it was. I'm watching on TV, and I was like, what is Paulus doing here? Like Paulus was, because he went to Syracuse and played quarterback for a year too.
Yeah. And
I'm like, wow. I was like, he really an assistant coach here? And I was juiced. So I saw him at this charity event and was telling him, talking about games he played in, how he used to smack the floor while he's playing defense.
No, it's great, man. It's great. I love that you're a Duke fan. That makes me feel really happy. It's awesome. It's awesome.
I am. I don't follow college basketball like I used to back like when you were draining threes out there, but I still follow. Like Shane Battier, I play in a golf tournament out in Lake Tahoe every summer, and Shane's been out there every year. And I got to play with him and got to know him a little bit, and seemed like he's such a great dude, and just like the face of Duke, it seems like.
Yeah, Shane's great. He's one of Coach K's all-time favorites. We had a little sort of debate a few years ago at the K Academy. It's this fantasy camp during the summer, and all these old men, they pay like $10,000. It all goes to charity, but they get a week of being sort of a Duke basketball player. So a lot of former players, they come in and they coach, and I've done it a few times, and it's a lot of fun. But anyways, a few summers ago, we had this debate amongst all the former players about who Coach K's favorite was. And most of us were convinced that it was Shane Battier, including myself. But it turns out that it's actually Wojo. Wojo is Coach K's favorite of all time. He's the son he never had, apparently.
And he's at Marquette?
Yeah, Wojo's at Marquette, yeah.
You talk about Wojo made me, when I was playing point guard back in the day, made me smack the floor when I was trying to play D.
I don't know that there's a more intense person in life than Wojo. He's
so that carries on off the court as well?
Oh, yeah, you don't want to deal with him. Like his glare at you. It's everything he does, he's super intense.
I could have never played for Wojo if he was coaching me because I loved him, but I played basketball and did all the AAU stuff growing up, and I absolutely despised playing defense. I hated defense, man. You guys are too good now. Guys like you, I would just sit off and let guys shoot. I'm like, you guys can't make it. You're only 13. You're not going to make any threes on me.
Wait, so you played basketball growing up and you hated playing defense, but you're a professional football player who plays defense.
Yeah, see, football, I mean, if you take a look at me, JJ, I played tailback in football. I'm not getting a scholarship to play tailback.
Okay. All right.
Fullback, they could have thrown me in at fullback, which they would have tried, but no. So I had to play D to get to continue playing football. But for some reason, basketball, I don't know. Defense is not fun. Defense is fun, and when you're on the basketball court, man, like, no, I'm not going to sit here and deny this guy and guard him all the way down the court.
Yeah, I don't know many people that think basketball is fun or the defense is fun in basketball. It's not fun. It's not. Everybody wants to have the ball. I don't know.
But how you guys, it's crazy. I went to, so you were with the Bucks in 2013?
Yeah.
I went to a Bucks game. I guess it was the season after you were gone. Jason Kidd was the coach. And I sat down low. I got to go with Aaron Rodgers. He goes over there a decent amount. And sat my only time ever going to an NBA game and sitting courtside. And the whole time I just could not believe at how hard it is to score 1 point in the NBA.
Yeah, it's good. It's very hard. And actually I think it's gotten harder because 20, 30 years ago, we didn't have all these tools. Like, we go to a timeout and we'll have a laptop. One of the coaches will have a laptop and he'll show us, 6 plays they might run coming out of this timeout. They didn't have those tools 20 years ago. So in terms of advanced scouting, X's and O's, all that stuff, we always know what the other team's going to run. And it's sort of like in football, right? When they say, all right, this team runs 5 or 6 plays and you just got to, what's coming. You got to stop it. That's the question. Can you stop it? And so it's weird. I don't know how it is in football, but in basketball, they always say, great offense will always beat great defense.
Yeah. Every shot you guys take pretty much is contested.
Yeah, every shot.
So it's like there's no – even on TV, you guys look way more open than you actually are from being there in person. Like, no, this dude, no matter what, has a hand in his face wherever you are. So
I had Aaron on the podcast maybe a month or so ago, and one of the things we talked at length about, and he kind of brought it up, was this sort of idea of mastering mechanics in imperfect environments. And shooting a basketball in an NBA game, you're always going to shoot in an imperfect environment. You're never going to get a perfect pass. Your footwork is never going to be 100% correct. You're always going to have a defender on you. It's not like you're just standing in one place, receiving a perfect pass, lining up a shot. And so there's so many factors. And if you're on the move, like I shoot a lot of my shots on the move. And so I've kind of got to gauge, where my body is leaning and where my momentum is taking me. I think about these things as I shoot the ball. And it really is interesting sort of to talk to other athletes about that and see sort of the challenges that a guy like Aaron may face in terms of just completing one pass. If I sat or stood on the sideline of an NFL game, I would have the same thought you had sitting on the baseline of an NBA game. I would think, how does a quarterback complete one pass? It's tough.
Yeah, very tough. Quarterback it's a different world, man. It's unbelievable the things that they have going through their head and just the adversity they face every second of every game. So yeah. Aaron is at the top of the list for me, man, how good he is. But when I go to games, though, or I watch on TV, what's also nuts is that you guys have fans sitting on your bench now. Obviously, money talks, and that's a lot of money. But you guys, It's like scorer's table, like 4 seats of randoms, and then Phil Jackson, and then the team. Like there's a dude that can touch Phil Jackson's leg, even though Phil's not coaching anymore. But is that weird having those guys basically in your huddle for timeouts too?
Yeah, every arena is a little different, but I would say the NBA fan, if you sit closer, you get probably a very unique experience relative to other sports. I know in LA, we have like the scorers table, and then there's like 4 seats right by Doc, and they're literally right by Doc to the point where like the last guy on the bench, is next to this guy. Like JJ Watt was at our game recently, and he was sitting next to our bench. And then we have our bench, and then there's this guy, I think he owns a bunch of grocery stores. He has 4 seats right by our bench too. And when I go to give everybody a high five before the game, this guy's at every game and he basically sits on our bench. He's one of the guys that I give a high five to. And I think it's really cool as a fan. I know it means a lot to him, but it's really cool, like as an NBA player, just to see the same faces again and again at arenas and sort of get to know people that way. It's fun.
Now, do you guys interact much? Like, do you personally interact much with any of the fans that are near the court?
When you see the same faces, you certainly acknowledge people. There's a kid named Ethan that sits across from the visiting bench at Staples. So whenever we go to shoot in the second half, I always come out and say hello to him. He's actually he's applying to Duke. I hope he gets in. He's getting ready to be a senior in high school, but people like him, I always try to say hello to people. There's another guy, Gunnar Peterson. He's a trainer out here in LA that went to Duke and knows a bunch of people that sits courtside. So he's been a lifelong Clippers fan. There's not many of them, but the Billy Crystals of the world, I say hello to.
Okay, what about like the random fan that just somehow stole the ticket from a buddy or got it, somehow won it at some charity event who wants to heckle you guys? Do you ever go back at people that try to yell stupid stuff?
I seriously, since college, I really don't. I mean, there's only so many things you could say about another human being, and I've probably heard everything. But oddly enough, there was one of those random guys that probably got the tickets at a charity event sitting right behind our bench this year. It was a home game. And I can't even remember who we were playing. We were winning the game by a lot. And I was sitting there in the fourth quarter, and he kept saying over and over again, Adam Morrison, Adam Morrison, Adam Morrison. And I was just being a smart ass. I said something back to him. I can't even remember what I said. Adam's a buddy of mine, so it wasn't like I said anything bad about Adam, but I said something about the guy. And he turned to his buddy, and he's he's just mad that he shared all of the National Player of the Year trophies with Adam his senior year. And I was like, all right, man, whatever.
All right, thanks. Thanks for talking about 10 years ago, big guy.
Yeah, and I was more like, no, I'm just annoyed that you keep saying this random dude's name in my ear. Like, just stop.
I can't imagine going to a game and yelling at you guys, but we're like, the fans are so close. And basketball is like the only sport like that where you 100% every game you're going to be diving into people's laps to get the ball.
Yeah, it's nuts. Baseball is a little bit like that. And whenever I go to a baseball game, I always try to sit as close as possible. But at the same time, like, I'll be sitting, let's say, by the on deck circle. Like, I'm not going to heckle the guy. That's just not in my nature. I think it takes a special person to be a heckler. Like, it takes a real special type of person to be a heckler.
That takes a very special person to be a heckler. Either crazy, I don't know. No, not even crazy, like overconfident. Just a big douchebag, really.
No, I don't. I mean, yeah.
It depends. Obviously, there's all different levels.
If you're a fan at a game and you're really into the home team and you're yelling things about the visiting team, like, I could understand that. But then there's the people who get on Twitter, let's say, and they take the time to at you, which, it's like, that could be up to like a 3 to 5 minute process just to find someone's username. So they take the time to find you, then they at you, then they write out a message, then they hit send. And it's like, dude, like, you just wasted 5 minutes of your life. And congrats on that, man. That's awesome. Good for you.
Congrats on that. But he gets to tell his girlfriend that if you respond to him, I got to him. I got him.
Which is why you never respond.
Exactly. So is that how you I always like to know, do you ever respond to people online?
No, not really. Not really. Like, I responded to a guy today just because he tried to correct me I used the word jealousy in a tweet, and he tried to tell me that I meant to say envious instead of jealous. And so I actually looked up the definition of jealous and tweeted at him a link to the definition of jealous. So I mean, I'm not going to like say anything bad about a person or, disparage his family or anything like that in a comeback. It's more just like, no, you're wrong and I'm right. That's it.
I got you. You're not going to search him, go check his profile and search out his tweets for the last 2 years and go back and want to tell him his kid is ugly.
Yeah, people actually do that, believe it or not.
Oh, God. People spend massive amounts of time just looking up things that they can get to people with.
Oh, man. People they'll stalk people's Instagram feed and be like, I found this photo from 52 weeks ago and your kid is ugly. And you're like, wow, you're wasting your time, but thank you.
Yeah, you win, bud. Thanks. Yeah. That makes me think about so you have a 2-year-old now?
Yeah, so my son is getting ready to turn 2 in August, and my wife is giving birth to another boy in August. So we're going to have 2 boys 2 years apart. Yeah.
Congrats, man. That's awesome. Has your NBA program or how you approach the game changed at all when you had your son?
If anything, it changes your perspective, I think, a little bit on life, and you sort of realize what is important and what isn't important. And in all seriousness, my best 2 years of my career have been the last 2 years. And I don't think it's a coincidence that it's also been while I've had a kid, because I feel pressure in the sense that I know I'm now feeding another mouth, from a perspective of having a job and an occupation. I know I have to do my job well, but getting to come home from a game and having his eyes light up and him saying, Dada, Dada, it's like, okay, so I shot 2 for 10 tonight. I don't care. I don't dwell on it. I move on because I know this little guy loves me. It's an awesome feeling. Do you have kids?
I have 3.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
5
Zone defense.
Yeah, 5, 3, and 5 months now. So
congrats.
Thanks, man. It's definitely. I always say every kid that I have, I feel like you get more man or dad strength where you feel better. Something about it, man.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to having a second one. We want to stop at 2. We want to keep it at 2, but I feel like now it's like a complete family. When it's just one kid, you're like, should we have another one?
Should we have another one or worry about this kid being an only child? What do you do there? Yeah.
Yeah. So we're excited. So you guys are lucky because I have one of my best friends played in the NFL for 9 years, and he's got 2 kids, and married or whatever. But we always talk about the difference, in sort of the travel schedules of NBA and NFL, and even comparative to us, baseball players, they're on the road a lot. We're on the road a lot. You guys sort of have it easy. You have 8 road games and you're gone one night. You're gone a night.
Yep. It is by far, it's almost like a 9 to 5 normal job. Even on away games. Yeah. If you have an away game, you leave Saturday at 1 in the afternoon, and a lot of times if it's close and into the division, you're going to be landing by 6 p.m.
Yeah. Yeah. So you get to put your kids to bed.
Yep.
Give them tubbies, put them to bed, all that stuff.
100%.
I miss out on a lot of that. I would say on average, we're probably gone close to 4 nights a week. Probably is probably pretty average for us. And some of that is a quick 2-game trip, and some of it is a 14-day trip where you're gone for half the month. So it's tough.
How does that work? I always wonder, how much freedom do you guys have when you, say you have a 14-game road trip, a crazy, I'm sure it's the longest. How much free time is built into that? Do you guys have bed check? Do you have curfew? Any of that?
We're a little bit different than the NFL. I know you guys have security guards roaming the hallways and stuff and bed checks. We don't have any of that. So I've never been on a team that had a curfew or bed check or anything. The expectation sort of is that every player knows, what they have to do to compete. Another difference though, most of our games are at 7:30. And so you guys, a lot of your games are at noon or 3 p.m. So your schedule's a little different. I think, guys have sort of mastered maybe going out till 2 a.m., sleeping till 10, taking that 2 or 3 hour afternoon nap, rehydrating during the day. I can't do it. I did it a little bit when I was maybe 25, but Now it's like, if I have 2 beers, I feel it for 4 or 5 days.
That's it's just it's amazing when I see other sports. It's because you guys do have so many games. You see like how casual it is. And football, there's nothing casual about it because there's only 16 regular season games. They're all such a big deal that they don't want to let anyone slip up. So they kind of do have to treat you like a kid and not let you be like you guys like this. They trust you to be a professional. If not, you're out of the league.
You are out of the league. It's not that there's not consequences for sort of misbehaving, but for the most part, if a guy wants to go to dinner and have a glass of wine or even go to a nightclub, if he's ready to play the next day, nobody has an issue with that. There's not sort of a condemning tone in the locker room if a guy goes out.
Do you have any guys that that just seemed like they were Superman that could seem to burn the candles at both ends? You played with any guys like that?
Play with a lot of guys like that. Play with a lot of guys like that. Some of the greatest players ever in their prime are notorious for that. People tell stories of Michael Jordan sort of hanging well into the night during the NBA Finals and then going and have 38 on the Jazz the next day. So I think it's honestly it's a little bit part of the culture, and I don't think a ton of guys necessarily are out drinking. But you get into a city at 4 or 5 in the afternoon coming from LA, and if it's a good city, you're going to go, explore the city a little bit.
Is there any rules on like alcohol in the locker room or on the team bus or plane?
Every team's a little bit different. We're not provided alcohol after games by the team. We're not provided alcohol on team flights. So it's not like I can go to the, stewardess and say, hey, I need a glass of red wine after a game. But sometimes like if you're on a road trip and you have a game on a Monday night, let's say in Oklahoma City, and you don't play again until Thursday in Dallas, you might grab like some beer in the locker room and then take that on the bus and maybe even on the plane. And then, nobody's driving. We're just getting on another bus to go to the next city. So it's a little bit lax. How is that for you guys? Like after a game flying back to a city, are you allowed to have alcohol?
No, man. There's real strict rules that came down from the NFL years ago.
Okay.
And each team wouldn't, each team is a little different, I guess, on how guys could creatively try to like sneak it onto the plane afterwards and things like that. But the coaches used to get served up in first class by the stewardess, I think, back in even when I was younger. And then the NFL cut that completely off because I'm sure I think they had some issues where coaches are landing in their home city and getting in their car and driving home.
Right. Exactly. So if we are going back to LA, there's not ever drinking on the plane. It's always because guys they got to get in their car and drive home. And in LA, you're sometimes driving 20 miles to get home. So it's similar. It's interesting to me though, because, I think there's this perception like amongst fans that athletes like shouldn't drink. And if you're in season and you've got to perform, like by all means, I agree with that. But I think we're all human and we all need to have some sort of outlet and a way to release sort of the stress and the pressure. So I've never had an issue. Like if guys want to, unwind with a couple beers after a game, I don't think it's a big deal. I also think it's really weird that, the NFL's cracking down on y'all when like Coors and Budweiser are like huge spots. I mean, NFL and drinking are, if you're an NFL fan, the two are synonymous with each other.
Yep. Yeah.
People go to NFL games to drink. I mean,
they sell draft beer for $12 a beer. It's 40 cents to fill up. So
yeah. It's interesting.
It's very interesting, and that's another thing that people don't realize how much guys smoke in the NBA, in the NFL, and people. I'm like, I don't know. I could never give a percentage, but I would say it's a pretty high percentage of guys that smoke weed in the NBA. Am I off base on that comment?
I wouldn't know the exact percentages. And, we're drug tested 4 times a year for street drugs. So marijuana being one of those street drugs. So from October 1st to June 30th, sort of the NBA calendar, we get tested 4 times a year. And then during the summer, we can be tested up to an additional 3 times, 2 times for steroids, 1 time for HGH. And then during the season, 2 times for HGH. So if guys want to do it in the off season, there's really no sort of ramifications for that. You're not getting tested after June 30th. And there are some guys that I think do, figure out ways to kind of cheat the tests during the season, but it's not that common as it used to be during the season. I mean, before I got to the NBA, early 2000s, you would get drug tested once and it would be in training camp. So if you wanted to stop smoking weed, you'd stop smoking 2 or 3 weeks before training camp. You'd take your test. And then for the next year, short of you getting arrested for possession, you were good to go.
Okay, that's news to me, man. I didn't realize they test you that many times. So, but I know you got to test positive 3 or 4 times or 5 times before it's made public.
It's the third time I think is made public. Yeah, the first 2 times you just first time's nothing. You just enter the program. We have like a drug program where you have to get tested a certain amount of times. You have to get counseling a certain number of hours and all that stuff. I'm sure you guys have to deal with the same stuff. But. Yeah.
Okay, because my boy Christian Laettner, man, Dookie.
Well, there's a lot of guys that have smoked themselves out of the league. It does, but it goes back to what we were saying earlier. It's if you're not a professional, you won't last. So if you're doing things that are a detriment to your ability to perform at a high level, eventually that will catch up with you.
Yep. Of course, you're professional. You're right. Yeah. I love when guys are treated as professionals, and some guys shouldn't be treated as professionals. You got to hold their hand and take them along because they're going to get into some bad stuff if you give them 4 minutes of free time.
Let me ask you a question. Speaking of drugs, this is something I've always been curious about. I think the average NFL fan probably wonders the same thing in terms of performance enhancing drugs. There's obviously ways for you to kind of get around a positive test. What percentage of guys in the NFL do you think are on PEDs?
Man, it's something that I always wonder. So recently, over the last 2 years, they started taking blood for HGH.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of guys that have been on HGH for sure. Even now, I'm sure there's plenty of guys on it just because the testing. There's it's weird. The whole HGH testing is not completely figured out yet. Yeah. So they can take blood, but it's a real tiny, small amount of guys that they can test. But as far as legit steroids, I don't know how any guys get around it because you get tested all year, all the time. They've come to my house multiple times. You'll get a call and they say, hey, you got a test. They've come wherever you're at. If I'm flying somewhere, they'll meet you. They'll send a guy from that city. So I really don't know now. Back in the day, it was huge in the, I think, late 80s, early 90s. But now, man, I don't know. As far as full go, whatever, testosterone, whatever people want, I don't know how guys get around it. I really don't.
Yeah, I think for me, that's always been a question. You certainly, in my sport specific, I'm not talking about NFL, but you certainly hear stuff about certain guys, or you look at certain guys, you're like, man, that's all natural. Really, that's all natural. But then you think to yourself, okay, maybe it's just genetics, or maybe it's just work. Because I'm the same way. I don't know how. The weed test, I get it, man. You're taking a little drink, you're getting it out of your system. But the other stuff, I don't know how you're cheating that one. I don't know how you're cheating a blood test.
No, for when it comes to steroid stuff, you're obviously just peeing in the cup, and the dude sits there and he's pants to the ankles. He's watching. You're not sliding anything in there in that cup.
No.
You're not wearing the Whizzinator, and at least the guys that have tested me.
Yeah.
I've been tested where 2 of my 3 kids were in the bathroom with me, and they wouldn't leave the room because it was really weird, man. I got called. My wife was away, and I was like, "Yeah, man, you can come, but my kids are gonna be up from their nap, and it's gonna be I'm just letting you know, my kids aren't just gonna leave me alone and go hang out in the house while you're in there and I'm peeing in the cup." So my kids are in there. It was always crammed in a small bathroom, and this dude is testing me, and my son's grabbing the one little vial. He's trying to pee in one of the cups. My daughter's trying to grab the clipboards, and I'm sitting there trying to. It was the most. I'm like, how are my kids? Is this going to affect them for the long term? When Dad's sitting there with his shirt off, pants to the ankles, with some old man watching him pee.
Yeah.
And so that was like they'll test you anywhere. So
I got tested one time. It was during the off season. I was in Austin, and I was a guest at someone else's country club, and they called me up, and they're like, yeah, you got to pee today, and I'm like, all right, well, I'm gonna be on the golf course for the next 3.5 hours, and they're like, oh, all good, we'll meet you there. So I'm like going around the country club trying to find a bathroom to pee for this guy. So it's so awkward. It's very awkward.
I think it's good that they. It's definitely good that they've. I don't know what the NFL ever was like back when guys were supposedly all juicing, not all, but a high percentage. Now I don't think it's a big issue, but the HGH thing for sure. I mean, they weren't testing forever for it, but HGH is different though. I don't think it makes guys like big and jacked. I don't know. I think it makes them feel good and healthy and get leaned up. That's what it seems like from the guys that I've observed that have made transformations at age 33 years old.
Yeah, I don't think either of us are naive. I mean, this shit happens. I mean, there's in both sports. I mean, it's certainly out there and prevalent, but other than implementing good drug testing policies, there's not a lot the league can do. And certainly in your sport and in my sport as well, specifically for performance enhancing drugs, I think the consequences are pretty steep. They are in baseball now as well. So, the incentive is certainly there in terms of contracts and money value added, but the consequences are there as well.
No doubt. They are. I mean, that's in the amount of money that guys get now, especially basketball. And you guys have the weirdest contracts with opt-in, opt-out clauses and max contracts. I know Kevin Durant's going through one of those situations now. So if I'm right, if he stays in Oklahoma City, he can make a ton more money. Is that basically what it is?
Yeah, so it's a little more complicated than that, but yeah. So if he were to sign a sort of a full max deal this summer, from another team he could get 4 years, but from his own team he could get 5 years. However, because the cap is jumping from $22 million this summer and then an additional $16 million next summer, a max contract is tied to a percentage of the cap. So it benefits him to actually I think he's going to do is sort of sign a 1-and-1. So 1 year guaranteed, 1 year player opt-in, play next year out, and then become a free agent next summer where he'll get an even higher percentage of the cap because the cap has gone up.
So can anyone that is offered a max contract do that?
Oh yeah, you can sign 1-and-1s the rest of your career. I mean, LeBron's done it now for his 2 years in Cleveland. I expect him to do it again this summer and do the same thing I think Kevin will do, which is opt out in 2017, which is going to be the max, or the salary cap will be, I think, 108. And for those guys, they'll be at a super max, which I think is 30 or 35% of the cap. So that their starting number is going to be like 35 million.
Guaranteed, right?
Yeah. And then with salary, I think you get a 7.5% increase off that first year number. So, that's an additional, I don't know, is that 2.6 million, let's say, per year. So by the end of that contract, the 5th year, he's going to be making $45 million.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Good for you guys.
Yeah.
That's what people don't realize. And I've come to find out, I didn't know until the last couple of years, even like not marginal, everyone's a stud in the NBA, but even like marginal guys get huge shoe contracts, it seems like.
No.
I'm talking huge, like compared to a guy in the NFL getting 10,000 in merchandise.
What? No.
Are you Nike, by the way?
Yeah, I'm Nike. I think somebody's lying to you.
Stay with Nike for sure. Nike's legit.
Yeah, we're just gonna plug Nike on this podcast.
I'm not even with them, but I wear it.
I mean, like, from my experience, 10 years ago, I think there was a lot of guys who would sort of make between, let's call it like 400 and 800 a year from the Nike account. And what Nike and Adidas realized is there's only certain guys that actually sell shoes. There's only certain guys that actually move the needle for them. So instead of paying 10 players $500K, let's pay one guy $5 million. And let's invest that sort of allotment we've set aside to pay athletes to one guy who's really going to move the needle for us. So for most guys in the NBA, honestly, most guys probably just have a merch account if they have a shoe deal. I get paid, but the amount I get paid is so it's not, I'll put it this way. It's probably less than the median income in the US. So it's not a lot of money relative to, Kevin Durant or some of these guys that are signing like $200-300 million deals with Adidas and Nike.
Okay, well, I got some misinformation, and I was like the normal guy that just believes it. Okay, thank you. I'm glad you cleared that up.
I always too. It's always like whenever somebody tells me like, oh man, like so and so, they pay me $300 a year. I think to myself, no, because like I could probably say like, oh, Nike, they pay me $500 a year. In the event that I was the NBA MVP, I would get a bonus. First team All NBA, I would get a bonus. Won an NBA championship, I would get a bonus. So yeah, in theory, they pay me $500 a year or $500K a year. But I see 40 of that. You know what I mean? So
I got you. They used to do that in football contracts for like the teams would say, oh, this deal is 4 years and $85 million. And you'd see the dude would be a quarterback, and in the contract, there'd be non-likely to be earned incentives. And the starting quarterback would be like, he gets a $4 million bonus if he averages 46 yards a punt this year. And it's like, no, it's not going to happen. Like, I know the agents want to make themselves look good. So they would put all that in the contract. Now that's all gone. They cut all that out. They can't do it really anymore. So
that's good. That's good.
Wow, man. All right, JJ, I'm going to wrap this thing up, but I really appreciate, like I said, gigantic Duke fan. But before I go, I just wanted to ask you, like, what do you see yourself doing when you are done playing? It seems like you're setting the stage already, but where do you see yourself?
There's a couple sort of ideas or options that I'm exploring right now. One, of course, is sort of the media option, and that's why I'm doing the podcast. I've been on ESPN. Doing analyst work a couple times. I actually taped a test show with Bill Simmons yesterday for his new HBO show. So I'm sort of exploring that world. It's not necessarily something I know I want to do, but it's something that certainly interests me. And then if I was to stay in the game, I'd want to work in the front office. But honestly, what I really want to do is, as soon as I'm done playing, I want to go back to school, and I want to go get my MBA from a really good business school. And so I've actually I've started studying a little bit. I have hold on one second. It's somewhere in my office. I have the Kaplan's GMAT sort of test guide and MBA School for Dummies, those sort of books all over the place. So that's really sort of, the first thing I want to pursue. And ideally, if I could get my MBA while simultaneously sort of dabbling in broadcasting or dabbling in front office work, that would be really cool. What do you want to do?
Media stuff, man. I want to call games. I wanted to be a color analyst for games.
AJ Hawk and Troy Aikman.
Well, someone's got to be a play-by-play guy. That's the problem. You got to have a Joe Buck, man. There's no former players doing play-by-play.
Well, I was going to say y'all too. Maybe throw in Joe Buck there. That'd be a good team. Why not just throw me on that? I'll go jump right to the number one team on Fox. Yeah, exactly.
couple legends there. I had Joe Buck on here. He was amazing.
Oh, he's great.
Did you see the article written about Joe Buck on the Ringer website on Bill Simmons?
No, I haven't seen it yet.
I mean, it just came out like a couple days ago. It's really good. But what's your Twitter account, man, for people to find you so random fans can yell Adam Morrison at you on there?
Yeah, so if you want to harass me online, my Twitter is at JJ Redick. I have one D in my last name, so at JJ Redick. My Instagram is at JJ Redick4. And my podcast is called The Vertical Podcast with JJ Redick. Like AJ's podcast, you can find it on iTunes. It's also on Spotify. It's on Yahoo. So, yeah, give it a listen. It's good stuff.
It is. I'm a fan as well. And that number 4 in the end of your Instagram account just happens to be retired by Duke, by the way.
Yes, that is true. For
anyone that doesn't know that. So, JJ, thanks again, man, and I hopefully will talk to you again sometime.
All right, AJ, I appreciate it, man. It's awesome. Thank you.
All right, see you.
We're glad you could join us for today's conversation. After you subscribe to the show, head over to thehawkcast.com or reach out to AJ directly on Twitter at @officialAJHawk to recommend future guests that will help us inspire people to keep talking. Thanks again, and we look forward to speaking with you next time on the HawkCast.